Look, they stole the idea for this map right out of the movie Elysium. I deduced, without looking up any facts, that the space station in the movie was scientifically incorrect soon as I saw it. You got a ring here that rotates and creates centrifugal force to simulate Earth's gravity. I'm not sure how fast it has to spin to simulate 1g or Earth's gravity. I think I heard it's 180 miles per hour, but I don't know for sure. You can see that it's U-shaped, just like a tire, where the interior wall, which would be the ceiling in this case, doesn't exist. In the movie, the interior wall is exposed to space, so a spaceship can freely fly in and out of the atmosphere. Rotation is a very good concept for simulating gravity in space, so astronauts can avoid health issues like reduced bone and muscle mass from being in zero gravity. I wouldn't want to be in zero gravity for long because of the health effects. Problem is, centrifugal force is not true gravity. It only affects you as long as you stay in contact with the rotating surface. On Earth, you jump up into the air, and the planet's gravity brings you back down, because that's true gravity. I don't have to touch the Earth to be affected by its gravity. With centrifugal force, I believe if I jump away from what is the ground, or the inside of the rotating wall that serves as the floor of this space station, I will not come back down. Here's what I think will really happen. When you jump up on a spinning station, there are two forces acting on you. One is the momentum that carries you up, produced from the thrust of your feet. Second is the momentum of you traveling at the same speed as the station is rotating, as you ride on it around and around and around. So here's what I think would happen. You would jump up, but because there isn't much force behind your jump, you'd probably slow down pretty fast. But maybe not. Maybe you just keep drifting up and up and up. However, this momentum of traveling at the same speed as the station rotates would keep moving you forward. So from the vantage of the person jumping into the air, it would look as if at the apex of your jump, as if you're just suspended above the same spot. If you're riding on a train or a plane, you're moving at the same speed as the vehicle. If you jump into the air while on a moving vehicle, you drop back onto the same spot on the floor. The vehicle doesn't move away from you just because you're not touching it anymore. The same thing applies here. You jump up and the momentum carries you at the same speed as the speed of the floor from which you jumped. However, centrifugal force isn't true gravity. Once you're in the air, there is no gravity to pull you back down. So what would happen is a person who jumps into the air, or tossed a ball into the air, or any object, would simply keep drifting in a straight line until it contacts the curved floor again. Now, the spot from which you jumped will remain beneath you. So from your vantage, it will look as if you're descending back down, but it will seem as if you're descending very slowly. But what's really happening is you're not descending. You're traveling forward in a straight line, but the curvature of the floor is coming up to meet you, to intersect with you. If you were to toss anything up in the air while on a space station like Elysium, it would fly up, and then it would appear suspended as it simply drifts alongside the rotating floor, until the curvature of the floor causes the object to make contact with it again as it curves up to meet the object. If you're looking up at the object, it would appear as if it's falling, but very, very slowly. That would be just an illusion, though. When you have such an enormous circumference, it would take a drifting object, moving in a straight line, quite a while to reconnect back with the rotating circle. So, on a space station like this, you probably couldn't fall like you would on Earth. So let's say there is a building there, and you step off the building into empty air. Well, the centrifugal force would cease acting on you as you lose contact with the surface, and all you would have left acting on you is the forward momentum that would simply carry you forward until you softly reconnected with the rotating surface sometime later. It would almost be like walking on air. Because you and the surface are traveling at the same speed, as you meet at a shallow angle, you probably wouldn't be hurt at all. It's like riding inside a fast-moving train and accidentally bumping into the wall of the train. Sure, the train is going 80 miles per hour, but so are you, because you're inside it, so therefore the contact is negligible. But if you stand still while the train touches you at 80 miles per hour, then you'd be hurt. So that means playing sports like baseball on a space colony that requires centrifugal force to simulate gravity would be very weird and impossible. You'd hit the ball and it would just keep traveling forward, on and on and on, until the curved surface comes up to meet it. Everyone would be almost always scoring an instant home run. They would have to invent some kind of brand new sports that would take into account this kind of change in physics. So you could jump up from the floor and then simply drift at the same speed as the station is rotating, paralleling the floor. So the spot you jumped from would remain beneath you until the curvature of the surface you jumped away from meets up with your feet again. Because while you're drifting forward in a straight line, the surface beneath you is traveling in an arc, and that arc would bring the surface back toward you. So you wouldn't be falling, but rather the illusion would be that you're floating or descending, but very slowly, but you're not actually descending. In the movie Elysium, they were flying helicopters inside this thing. Problem is, once an aircraft is not touching the floor anymore, the centrifugal force would cease acting on it. On Earth, a helicopter is constantly fighting gravity by the propeller sucking the helicopter upward through the air. Such a gravity doesn't exist in a space station like this once you're up in the air. Flying a helicopter means you'd likely shoot off and go topsy-turvy and crash, as there would be no gravity to counteract the thrust from the spinning blades. Imagine trying to fly a helicopter in zero gravity. You'd have a huge problem. In Infinite Warfare, it looks as if they exactly copied the space station in Elysium. It looks like absolute plagiarism. Another thing is, centrifugal force will not keep air inside that tube, while the tube itself is in a vacuum of space. I think air is too loose, and there's no way centrifugal force will keep the air pinned in place, because the air particles have no way of gripping onto the rotating surface, and they bounce around too much. I mean, water is subject to centrifugal force, though. If you put water in a bucket and spin the bucket upside down really fast, most of the water will stay inside. I'm not sure if the same would apply to air and in a vacuum, though, because it seems like the vacuum would be more powerful than the centrifugal force pinning the air to itself. I could be wrong, but it seems as if the air would not stay inside this thing for very long. And here is yet another problem. You have a U-shaped tube with centrifugal force that's keeping the air inside it. Okay, but the retaining walls on either side that are holding the air in, I'd say they look about 2,000 feet high. We could be generous and say 4,000 feet. But there is no way 2,000 or even 4,000 feet of air above you would create enough atmospheric pressure for anyone to live or for water to stay as liquid. The walls would have to be as high as Earth's atmosphere is deep to simulate the correct atmospheric pressure on the floor of this thing. There is no way they could have a structure like this with the inner wall non-existent and exposed to space. They would have to have it sealed from all sides, all four sides, and pressurized. So a pressurized tube, that's the only way. Atmosphere this shallow would be too thin to breathe, there would not be enough air pressure for water to remain liquid, or it couldn't absorb cosmic rays, and there is not enough atmosphere to safely break up even a small meteorite. Why is there a blue sky with clouds surrounding this thing? This is supposed to be in orbit, quite a ways from Earth. How is there blue sky with clouds surrounding this thing that extends way outside of it? Consider this kind of setup in miniature as an experiment. So create a vacuum chamber, then take a tire like this to simulate the space station that's open to the vacuum on the inside. Put a lizard, a small lizard, inside the tire. Slosh some air into the tire while it's rotating real fast. I don't know how you would get it to rotate fast, though. And see if the lizard can survive living inside the tire with the air you poured into it that's supposedly kept in place by the centrifugal force. Put some small potted plants into the tire to scrub the CO2 for the lizard. Then just rotate the tire fast enough to simulate gravity and see if that rotation keeps the fucking air in. Now you see how laughable that looks. Do you really believe the air will stay inside the tire in a vacuum just because it's spinning and the centrifugal force is keeping the air in place, and the lizard will stay alive, being able to breathe? I doubt it. I think the air will escape and disperse into the vacuum without giving a fuck about the centrifugal force. Only way this would work is to have a fully sealed tube, which is not what's depicted either in Elysium or Infinite Warfare. Infinite Warfare is not a true space environment game. It is a child's version of what space is like. It's like Futurama's version of space. Let's take gravity and how the effects that it should have. You're on the moon, or on a rotating station that relies on centrifugal force to simulate gravity, or on Earth, and I'm sure there will be maps on Mars and Europa and other celestial bodies throughout the solar system. Doesn't matter what planet or moon you go to in this game, the gravity is depicted to be all the same. You still need thrusters to jump around. Why do you need thrusters in a space station to jump off the floor where, once you die, the bodies float in zero gravity? So what's keeping you on the floor until you die? Magnetic boots that stick you to the floor? But running around in magnetic boots would not feel the same as running around on Earth normally. It would be quite difficult. And in zero-G, why would you need jetpacks to jump off the floor, but soon as you die, your body is in zero-G and it just floats? On a moon like Europa, where atmosphere is probably so thin as to be non-existent, and you have to wear a space suit, how do you hear enemy gunfire and able to judge how far away it is? See, this is not a real space environment. The physics are incorrect. You know who could make an actual true space game that would be much more accurate? DICE and EA probably could. The creators of Battlefield. They take the environment seriously. Darkness in Battlefield is like real darkness, where you can't see. Fog is like real fog. There are effects of snow blindness. I mean, you take your gun out, and the sight on your gun frosts over from the freezing air. I mean, walls that collapse from explosions. There's bullet drop. Have you played a nighttime map in Call of Duty where your visibility was any worse than had you played a daytime map? No. Have you played a map on Call of Duty with real fog that obscures your sight? No. There was a map called Fog on Ghosts, but you could still see everything, despite the fog. Here is how a true space shooter would be if the developers actually cared to make a first-person shooter where you have to confront the hazards of fighting a war in space or being in places other than Earth. Gravity would be different from one celestial body to another. On the moon, you could probably run longer without being tired and jump higher and land more lightly than you would on a map that takes place on Earth. When an explosion goes off, all the air would be sucked out of the space station, and the suction might actually pull your body through the hole. Explosives like grenades would be affected, because on Europa, or Earth's moon as well, there would be no atmosphere conducive to combustion or carrying the damaging shock wave from the explosion. A grenade on the lunar surface might be kind of useless, since there is no air and no atmosphere to carry the shock wave. It might not even ignite. In zero gravity on a space station, you wouldn't just have dead bodies floating, it would be complete chaos to have gun battles, as there is no up or down, and you can just turn any which way, and the enemies can come at you from any direction. In zero-G, you likely would need thrusters to control which way you drift, if you have nothing to grab on to pull yourself. See, I believe the makers of Battlefield could pull off a true space environment first-person shooter, and they wouldn't need to incorporate boost jumps, because it would be interesting enough without those. They would actually take all the distinct hazards offered by various moons and planets in our solar system and incorporate those into the game, and how it would affect what you can and can't do in the game. Question is, do you want to play a war game in an environment so different from Earth? You wouldn't be able to create explosions, or by running off the edge of something instead of falling, it would cause you to drift forward helplessly until the curving floor of the space station met up with you again. But see, that would be truly putting a first-person shooter into a space environment. Infinite Warfare is not that. It plays just like any Call of Duty on Earth would play, and space is just a backdrop. The developers sounded like they were so proud of making a game that's in space, but you look at multiplayer and space is just a backdrop. It's like one of those matte paintings in old Star Trek TV shows that simulate being on an alien planet, and it's just a set background. The only reason Call of Duty is in space is because it's a gimmick, and so they can use the excuse of it being futuristic to put a bunch of bullshit abilities and equipment into the game, and then explain it all away as, it's in the future. This way they also have an excuse to put up a bunch of fake, made-up shit that soldiers would never use in real life, so they can put it into supply drops. It's all nonsense. Like, they have a map that has space shuttles with wings that land at an airport on the moon. What good are wings on a vehicle if it's landing in a place without atmosphere, so it can't glide? It's like they just took random space-related shit from all kinds of other sci-fi works and just threw it all together into the game. And because the game is aimed at little kids, no one would question this stuff. I mean, it's about as accurate of a space game as Destiny. I mean, the maps do not make you feel that you're on another planet. They look like a movie set, or they might as well be a stage set for a movie, and the Earth you see in the background, or the Jupiter you see in the background, could just be a painting on a wall.